Alright, now we go to day 2, day to actually make our bread. I've pulled this out. This has been sitting trying to warm up to about room temperature. It says about an hour before you begin mixing. Remove it from the refrigerator. And the soaker if it's been refrigerated. Ours hasn't. It's been at room temperature all night. And it wants us to tear the sponge up into, like, it says about a dozen pieces. So what we're going to do is just chunk it and then pre-mix it a little bit with the soaker. And that's what it's wanting us to do, is just get a little pre-mixing going on. And I'm adding it to the mixing bowl. If you wanted to do this by hand, I'm going to tell you, you're not going to stir it with a spoon or a fork. I've tried. I would say wet hands, slightly floured hands maybe, and work it out on a floured surface would be about your best bet, because this stuff is sticky and thick and heavy. So what we're doing here is we're going to add that to the mixing bowl, and then we're going to add our additional dough ingredients, which is going to be, recipe says 1 tablespoon of salt. I bump that up to 2. 2 1/4 tablespoons, or 1 teaspoon of salt. Bump that up to 2. 2 1/4 teaspoons of yeast, or 2. Basically, for us, we're going to add 2 packets of yeast. The standard bread yeast. And then right now, the added ingredients call for a tablespoon of unsalted butter, 2 for us, and 2 tablespoons of honey, and it says to hold off on those ingredients right now. And finish getting this added up. I'm going to start the mixer with a paddle type attachment, and then after the dough gets formed, we'll switch to a dough hook. Alright, now with all our dough in the mixing bowl, go ahead and get our yeast packets opened up. And our 2 packets of yeast. And our 2 teaspoons of salt. Now we're going to start this mixing. Start it on low. And this is, as you can tell, a very sticky dough. Might take a little playing with it, where you got to knock it off the mixer and bring it back up. We're going to let that go until the dough forms anyway, for a couple minutes. Now that our dough is very well mixed together, like I said, that took a little bit of playing and working with the mixer. Next time I do this, I'm going to try wet hands on a floured surface and see how well that works. Directions say to switch over to a dough hook. Slide that on here. Mix her up. There we go. Peek down in there. Now we got our dough mixing good. Instructions say for 2 minutes on low. So we'll let that go. Come back here in just a minute. Alright, we've let that go for 2 minutes now, and the simple next step is to kick it up a notch and let it go for another 2 minutes. Now that that's gone for about 2 minutes, we're going to add our 2 tablespoons of unsalted butter. And for our batch, it's going to be 4 tablespoons of honey. Now I'm just going to go by estimate on this because I'm getting low on my honey, and deep down there in a jar. Just gonna make it. 3. And 4. Put that off the top of the dough hook. It's not gonna do us any good up there. And mix that in for another 2 minutes. Alright, our dough is nice and mixed up now. Drop that down. What our recipe states is on a floured work surface. We're going to knead this out and add water and honey as necessary. And I can tell you right now by the feel of it, it's nice and wet. So we're definitely going to add a little bit more flour to it. This countertop is going to be my floured work surface. In here and just sift a little bit of flour out on the counter. Give them plenty of room to work. Get our dough out there. Ooh. Yeah, very thick, very heavy, very wet. It's going to use up that flour on the counter real quick. And we just need to, this is something where you, I don't know, pick up by playing, by process. You will add, depending on how it turned out for you, flour or water as necessary. And then knead it by hand for a few minutes. You want a soft, slightly sticky dough. You want it kind of sticky. And you want it uniform. But you want it to be kind of stiff too. You don't want it to be too droopy. It's still sticking in places. Our flour from our work surface is going to knead in there, and if we need more, we'll pull some from the bag. But I think it's mixing up about nice. A little bit more. Pull it apart. Gets those insides. That's where all the good sticky stuff is. Coming together nice. Don't want to get too much on her. Don't want it dried out. Alright, now we're going to make her into a ball here. And we're going to transfer it over to a greased bowl. Which, to grease my bowl, I'm going to take a little bit of butter here. Spread it around in here. You can use Crisco, lard, baking spray. I just think real butter adds a little more flavor to it. Now we're going to turn our dough ball in there and get it coated on all sides. There we go. Now we're going to cover it. And let it rest for about 45 minutes and let it rise. Alright, our dough's set for about 45 minutes. You can see it's rose up nice. We need to, the instructions say about 1.5 times its size. So, because most of your recipes will say double. And this recipe's not wanting to get it go that high. Feeling it takes away from the integrity of the bread. So, again, on a floured work surface, and then we need to turn it into a loaf into a 9x5 baking pan. So I'm going to pinch that in half. Loaf number 1, loaf number 2. Okay, place them in a 9x5 loaf pan, cover and allow it to rise for another 45 minutes. I don't have 2 9x5 loaf pans. I've got one and a cheapy aluminum one. I'm going to go ahead and spray these, little standard cooking spray, olive oil spray for mine. There's one. And 2. We're going to cover these back up. Let them rise for another 45 minutes. Now while these are rising, what we're going to do is going to go over and do some work in the oven.